I'd like to welcome Councilman Jay Banks. In addition, so the question was, as a youth, I am concerned about having good, sustainable sources of potable water and holding agencies accountable for their policies and procedures. On Friday, Mayor Cantrell spoke of the potential of the whole water system being cut off if we don't make the 17,000 people pay their bills now. Gentlemen, I ask this question. Can you tell me how you feel about that statement and what can we do to avert such a catastrophe? While you are pondering that question, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join and inform us today. Councilman Geruso, please continue.
I was rolling before you got here. So really, I think part of what we need to do is be focused on solutions, right? Here's one of the things that is wrong with the system that's right now. If Jay sells his house to me, I am not getting a bill from Sewage and Water Board right now. There are 9,000 of those accounts that Sewage and Water Board is not collecting right now. I want to repeat that. 9,000 accounts that Sewage and Water Board is not collecting. And that's not for 1 month. It may be for 3, 4, 5 months. When I went to Sewage and Water Board, I looked and saw that people had actually had their meters read and were not receiving bills for that period of time. What I think realistically needs to happen is Sewage and Water Board needs to go back, look at its system historically before Cogsdale was implemented, look at those first 2 or 3 months, and then for anybody who has a disputed bill, look at the amount that may be owed, and let's go back to that and make sure it's getting right. People who are not paying at all, that's not right either. But what we're having is people who are getting $3,000 bills, $5,000 bills, $5,700, and that's wrong. I had a constituent who called and had a nice problem being out of town the whole month of July, but then they got a $2,700 bill. There's no way possible with nobody in the house that is right. So I think if you want to be a responsible agency, let's start acting responsibly and collecting the money.
The idea of turning people off is not good. But the fact is that the water system has to have revenues to continue to operate. Now, I think that there's two sides to this coin. There are people that have legitimate disputes with the bill. There are people that have received bills that are so outrageous that there is no way that they can realistically expect to pay them. But then on the other side, there are people who have just refused to pay, period. And there's a median in between there. Now, those people that are in between, I don't think they ought to be cut off. Those people that have disputes for their bills, I don't think they should be cut off. But those people that have not paid anything, they have to pay. Because the reality of it is that if the water system runs out of money, ain't none of us going to have water. That's a fact. And as unpalatable as this is, the fact is that there are people that are beating the system. And those folks need to be dealt with. Now again, the in-between people, those of you who got those $5,700 bills, and you do not live in a hotel, it don't take a brain surgeon to figure out that something's wrong with the bill. Yeah. All right? And I think we need to have a sensible, practical methodology of dealing with this. To me, it ain't rocket science. This we can figure out, and it's not difficult to do. You got a 2-family household, they didn't use $5,700 worth of water. Even if the pipes was broke, they couldn't use $5,700 worth of water. That's a no-brainer to me. So I think that there is a way to work it, but I do not think that we can just arbitrarily say that people don't have to pay when the system has to have money to operate.
This is an interesting one for me, but it's also very easy. The city burned down twice. I think it was 1788 and 1794, right? So most people think we're like 30 feet below sea level, so that's sunk a little bit since then, but it was an average of about 14 feet then. When they realized it was like 300 billion gallons of water flowing out of Mississippi, and there was no way to get to it to stop the city from burning down, right? So somebody had to figure out, wow, we probably need to access that water. So in 1896, when the Orleans drainage system was set up, it wasn't set up for the drainage system, it was set up for the people, to protect the city, with an adequate, viable source of water. First, to protect the citizens in a city that was below seawater, so that they could access potable, adequate drinking water. So it wasn't done on behalf of creating an agency. It was done on behalf of improving the quality of life for the citizens there. So I start there because, to me, that the most important thing isn't the viability of the Sewage and Water Board. The most important thing is the viability of your house, your business, how the system works for you. So now, you have to know the history of it to understand that. So now, secondly, it's kind of basic to me. I read the reports. I watched the investigators. I actually contributed to putting together some of those reports because I know a little bit about the system. I watched Channel 4. I read the news articles. And consistently it says that private contractor that was paid millions of dollars set up a faulty billing system. So unless I read something different from what you guys read, we know that's on the table already, right? So we know that's on the table. We know the private contractor that was paid to set up billing systems to collect your money set out bills that were on average 3, 4, 5, 6 times more than what your average bill was. So now the solution is to punish you for what was reported that a contractor was paid to fix. That doesn't seem right to me. Period. We have a sewer system, we have a drainage system, we have a water system. The sewer system is already under consent decree. There are 10 basins that will probably cost $6 to $10 billion to fix, that the federal government says we have to do with sewer. We had some issues with drainage several years ago. Drainage village that was renewed was cut off. People voted against it in New Orleans East. We lost a lot of money there. They still have not found new revenue for the drainage system. The water system, water quality is extremely important. No city, no people can survive without that. But water quality. But I don't punish you because the board and the contractor made a mistake. So to me, step 3, there's an opportunity. I think, given the fact that all 7 council members mostly seem to be in lockstep about penalizing the people for the mistake of the board, especially, and I'll throw out a couple of other things. We know that the Sewage and Water Board had contractors start with $10, $15, $20 million contracts. We know that they billed at $120, $140 million when they were finished. So you don't have enough money to give you guys some amnesty or relief, but you had enough money for a contractor to go from 20 to $141 million. CH2M Hill. So, CH2M Hill. If you look at the original contract, by the time they were finished, the contract started at one point, they wound up paying. So it wasn't an issue with paying them, but there seems to be an issue with giving some relief to you guys. So the opportunity here now is, if most of the city council is against cutting folk water off, the water board seems to need to, as Councilmember Banks said, they need the money to invest in the system. So it's an opportunity for for different parts of the system to come up with a plan where you can meet in the middle. I would say the first thing to do would be give folks amnesty. Whatever your average bill is, let's continue at that while we investigate what the problem is. To me, that's easy.
Right.
Also, I urge the audience that if you have any specific question that you would like these councilmen to answer, please write them on the index cards that are right here, and put it in the basket. And also to the councilmen, please keep your statements under 7 minutes. So our first set of questions is directed towards Councilman Joe Giarrusso. Firstly, what is the city council going to do to return the control of our water to a totally non-privatized, publicly owned, run by city council, and with our own public employees?
All right, so Councilmember Thomas just talked about the fact that you have 3 different divisions. There's sewer, water, and drainage. Right now, there's 2 different things. First, there's no sitting city council member on the board. So that is going to come to the voters soon for the voters to decide whether or not they want to return a single council member or engineer to the board of the Sewage and Water Board. That is not the case as we sit here right now. So that will be coming on the ballot in November, Jen? Yes. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, and I'm not going to pick on them, but the city doesn't control the Sewage and Water Board as an entity. It's a state entity. So it's controlled by the state, which means if you want any change, it needs to come from the state legislature, which means this. It is incumbent upon us, the city council, and the mayor, to work with our legislative delegations and say what we are looking for. Frankly, I would favor moving some of that into City Hall, so that way it's a little bit closer to city government and we can touch it a little bit more. One of the proposals on the table is to move all of Sewage and Water Board into City Hall. That would mean taking 1,300 people and already 4,500 people and adding all of them to the mix. That may be a lot. But if we took the drainage side and you melded that with Department of Public Works and moved that into City Hall, that's something you can manage. That's something that's workable. And that's something that serves all the people well. Why is that? Because right now, when you have a problem, Department of Public Works is responsible for your catch basins and responsible for your pipes that are smaller than 36 inches. What is Sewage and Water Board responsible for? They're responsible for the pipes that are larger than 36 inches. And what's been happening in the city for decades on end, somebody digs up a pipe, and then it's a fight between Department of Public Works and Sewage and Water Board about who's responsible for fixing it. That's been a problem since you were on the council. It's a problem since my mom worked in City Hall. It's been a problem for a long time. We have to do a better job of making sure that those departments are working with each other, that there's local control of these issues, and to make sure that I think that the council has some more oversight of what happens to ensure that people are being served well.
Councilman Jay Banks, you sit on a committee in the state legislature. Please tell us what the legislature is doing that has or will have some impact on Sewage and Water Board.
Now, actually, young man, I don't sit in the legislature. And just let me maybe referencing the legislature through a bill created a task force to investigate the best place to operate the Sewage and Water Board. Now, the committee was created by the legislature, but it is staffed by me and some other interested parties. They set it up. And basically what that committee is doing is investigating potential management opportunities. Now, privatization is 1, absorption by the city is 2, splitting it up is 3, and there are a couple of others that are currently being explored. Now, at this point, I don't have a dog in the hunt. So I don't know which is the better way to go. There are people who are arguing on multiple sides about why privatization is the best. And then there are people who are saying there is no way we should privatize. There are people that are saying that we should absorb it into the Department of Public Works. And there are folks that are saying we shouldn't do that. There are people that are saying leave it like it is and change the composition of the board. And at this point, I don't have an answer for you because we're still looking at it. I do think, however, that it was a mistake under the previous administration to remove council members from the board. Because what you did with that, you took away the public accountability. And whether or not it was your councilman or not, there was somebody answerable to the public who sat on the board. And now you don't have anybody who's answerable to the public. So when you got a problem with Sewage and Water Board, who do you call? Now, Councilman Giusso touched on it earlier. We don't run the Sewage and Water Board. Matter of fact, we kind of have nothing to do with it. We don't have any authority over them as the city council. Now, hopefully, if you all will vote, I'm gonna tell you, I lobbied hard against when that thing came up before to remove council members, and I'm gonna be lobbying hard at this point to put one back. And I hope that you all will spread the message that that is critical on this November ballot, that you all do vote to put a council member back on the board. There has to be somebody who is answerable and responsible to you, because right now there's nobody. So that is something that's upcoming that's critical. But at this point, we don't know what the answer is. We're investigating to see, and I've got some inkling. I don't necessarily know if privatization is the best way. And there are business people that are saying that, there's a lot of money generated in sewage water. Well, let's be real about it. All right? There's a whole lot of money generated back there. So some of these private interests want that thing privatized because then they control where those contracts go.
That's right.
I don't necessarily know if that's the right way to go in terms of all of us. And when people ask me about the Sewage and Water Board, one of my standard answers is, y'all, my mama's still here. I ain't trying to get her to pay more than what she got to.
Come on now.
I got a vested interest in making sure we keep these rates as equitable as possible. Now, again, the system has to have revenue to operate, but it does not need to be a profit generator. We need to have it as fair and as equitable for all of us to pay. It is not a cash cow. It's nothing that we're supposed to be making money on. We just got to get enough to keep the wheels rolling. And that's the direction I'm going in.
Thank you. The first question for Councilman Oliver Thomas is, do you think there is a strategic plan in the works to take over complete control of New Orleans water?
I mean, there has been for a long time. I mean, that's not surprising when you remember what happened with United Water several years ago before Katrina. The efforts to privatize systems. Look, the privatization piece is one that's been a long time. I think it was the mayor of Indianapolis, Goldstein, I forgot his name. He was the dean of privatization. It was a conservative effort throughout cities where private companies were looking at city dollars, similar to the way they're looking at education systems and other government systems. And the one thing he found out, even being a proponent of privatization and conservative Republican, he found that in many cases when city employees had proper training and proper resources, they actually outperformed private entities without the increase. Well, what have we not done? When we've created privatization, we haven't contained costs. So if privatization doesn't improve accountability, improve performance, and contain costs, then why would you privatize other than just to give a company public dollars that are guaranteed? We know we need the assistance. To me, what has to happen, I think Councilmember Giroux, first of all, let me say, I think one of the advantages we have right now, and I moderated a couple of forums in the last election, one with Councilmember Giroux, and then in District B. But what I'm confident in right now is we have a city council now that's just not an automatic yay for everything. So, guys, whether you agree with what these guys do or not all the time, I feel very good about the fact that we have seven people that understand the city charter, that understand the mission, which is in many cases very different from what the administration does. And it has the opportunity to create some balance. Touching on what Councilman Giroux said, I think there's an opportunity to take a look at the system and how it's administered, right? What are some of the things in public works that could be combined, or some of the things in Sewage and Water Board that could be combined with the infrastructure system of public works? The 24-inch lines going to 36, 50, and 70-inch lines that actually go into the system. Now, given because my cousin was an engineer with a couple of engineering degrees over the maintenance division, I know a little bit about what did or didn't happen over the last several years. Given the fact that when Jim Singleton was on council, he was real studious in terms of how the system operated, from the drain lines to the system and all those utilities that are underneath. And they used to have meetings to coordinate when every entity had to do some work. If some work started, you brought in public utilities, you brought in drainage, and you say, hey, hold on a second. Before you dig up the hole, let's everybody take a look at how where their systems are so we can spend the least amount of money as possible. If you look at the down the drain report, which my cousin contributed to, there were about 6 or 7 years that there wasn't maintenance and replacement of those damaged lines. And if you talk to some of the intelligence in the drainage system council members, they will tell you that those large lines and those canals could be working perfectly. But if you have not maintained and replaced those 24-inch lines that connect to the larger lines, the water has no way to get there anyway. So I'm not a water expert, and I'm not an engineer, but that's the only reason why it explained to me that historically areas that have not flooded would have water standing for several hours and several days, even in systems that are graded higher in terms of the elevation than other parts of the community that have not flooded. That means the water doesn't have any place to go. One of the greatest crimes that's happened is that those drain lines have not been cleaned and maintained for a long period of time, right? That money went elsewhere, it didn't go into general maintenance. So what we have now, if you take a look at what Councilmember Banks and Councilmember Russo is talking about, you have an opportunity to develop a system of who's accountable for what, how you manage that, how they work together, and at the end of the day, what the outcome is. Privatization, companies want public dollars now. They want your dollars now. I would not start with a conversation about privatization. I would start with a conversation about administration.
Thank you. Well, Councilman Joe Giarrusso, what questions do you now have for Mayor Cantrell and the Sewage and Water Board?
Oh my gosh. How long? I only have 7 minutes? Five, okay. I think the first question really is, and Councilmember Thomas just touched on this, is what is leadership going to look like at Sewage and Water Board? We know that we're getting a new person to come in here beginning in September. What are his plans? How is he going to make sure Sewage and Water Board operates more effectively? What is he going to do to make sure that middle management, managers of the drainage department have ownership and are making sure they're meeting the needs of the citizens? What are we doing to make sure that people's needs are being met in water consumption, in sewer, and in drainage? One of the things Councilmember Thomas talked about is the fact that the departments don't talk very well together. There is a cooperative endeavorment agreement between Department of Public Works and Sewage and Water Board dated 1992 that says both of those departments are supposed to talk to one another and work together on solving problems, right? Before you go in, once you are in, once you need to settle everything up, how to pay each other, and you know what? They were supposed to develop policies and procedures about how all of that was supposed to work. And here we sit almost a quarter of a century later, and you know how much of that was done? None, y'all. Yes, thank you. I feel like I'm in church. Yes, none. Those are the questions I think that we need fundamentally ask. What is our leadership going to look like? What is culture going to look like? What is change going to look like? How are we meeting the needs of our people? How are we measuring responsiveness? How do we make sure we have safe water? How do we make sure our sewers are working properly? And I think the one thing that's on all of our minds, most importantly, is how are we making sure we get those bills right and in the right way for people, and being able to make sure that they can pay them correctly and that they're being sent and monitored the way that they need to be.
Thank you. Secondly, for
No, I actually have, we're doing unplugged. It's a series to get men together from all over the city. Now, I'm featured tonight where men from all over the city coming together, talking about how we can work violence and help some of our young people. And I'm supposed to be there for 6 o'clock. So I can take one more question before I have to leave. You guys are in good hands with these 2 guys.
Finally, for you, what do you see as a potential health risk for our citizens in this city?
That's a long list, and it has been for a long time. There's a level of stress and trauma in New Orleans that is even bigger than a lot of these dysfunctional systems that we're talking about. There are several. I do a segment called Mentally Speaking every month on WBOK with Victor Sims, calls Brian Turner, Dr. Turner has contributed. And many of the social science and behavior specialists have said that we actually need a trauma center here. New Orleans are good at dealing with dysfunction. We're good at dealing with violence, government neglect and abuse, poverty, and all of those things. So that list is extremely long. Until recently, people were not fearful when they saw a rain cloud, right? We're back to where we were in the 80s and 90s now, where you're seeing 8 and 9-year-olds that are part of gangs that are on robbing and assaulting people. I just finished the Citizens Academy with the DEA last year. As a matter of fact, we're putting together some meetings with Steve Azan and Brian Singleton to talk about the level and the number of young drug addicts we have out there that are snorting fentanyl and heroin. Kids 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. The gang that was in the shootout Jefferson Parish, with Jefferson Parish deputies, had 2 13-year-old girls. The last group in New Orleans that they arrested had 2 9-year-olds, 11, 12, 14, and I think the oldest was 15 or 16. So there's a whole lot of trauma in the city. But the number one thing in the city is that you cannot have a city with $1 billion airport project, with a $140 million resiliency project, with a $6 billion consent decrease with the sewer system over the life of that project, with $2.4 billion in FEMA reimbursement, with a $340 million World Trade Center project, and have one of the poorest African-American communities and black females in the nation. It doesn't matter who or where you are. If the majority part of your population has the poverty, is mired in the level of poverty and dysfunction that the African-American community is in New Orleans, you're always going to deal with these social ills. The report that just came out said that about 1.5% of New Orleans make $1.1 million. That's what they average. The rest average about $41,000 a year. Single women in New Orleans are some of the poorest per capita in the nation. Our women take care of our children and families, strong families, healthy families, economically independent women mean strong families. The African-American community disparity now went from about $26,000 to, in some cases, almost $50,000 to $60,000 post-Katrina. The data set says that children are actually poorer and more dysfunctional than they were pre-Katrina. So where do you start? I say you start with an economic model that guarantees participation, that doesn't say you reach 35%. You tell contractors you can't get the contract unless you guarantee 35%. There has to be not only a living wage in the city, but a saving wage. If we have the most powerful tourism economy per capita in the world, and one of the smallest cities, a city with less than 400,000 people that average 8 to 10 million visitors a year, why do we have to pay people $7.25 an hour? You don't have to. I think if you start there, you begin to chip at some of the level of dysfunction. Smart people like these council members will begin to work on how systems work together. And I think at some point, maybe not this generation, but the next, we have a chance to grow out of it.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for giving us a moment of your time. Given the potential health hazards, Councilman J. Banks, what do you suggest be done to make sure all citizens in New Orleans have water without having to prove their innocence, and until the Sewerage Water Board straightens out their billing system, stops the massive number of estimated bills, amends the meter reading software, and fixes the meters?
All of that. The fact is that we have asked that they not disconnect people that have been trying to pay their bills. And I'm going to go back to what I said previously. There are individuals who have just said, we're not going to do it. But those folks, they kind of get what they should. But the fact of the matter is, we know that people have to have water to live. We know that the system has to be operational so that we all have water to live. So at the end of the day, if the water system's cut off, we all got a problem. So there has to be some bills being paid. But again, the line is drawn between those of us that have had disputed bills. Let me give you full disclosure. I'm likely to be on the list. Our water bill went up. So my wife, my full disclosure, she writes all the checks. So we had been paying the dollar amount that we had been getting, and then she increased it by a little bit when we got this crazy bill. But it's still less than half of what the crazy bill was. My water bill was like $600. And ain't nobody in the house but me and her. So we know that that wasn't right. But she didn't pay all of that. So if the cutoff is $50, then I'm pretty much so likely to be cut off too. But we have been consistently paying what we were paying before the spike took place. Okay? Now, in order to make sure that it doesn't happen, we are going to keep asking them to have compassion, logic, and sensibility as it relates to these cutoffs. I don't think that very many people can argue that there is a line between somebody that has been paying their bill partially and somebody who has refused to pay anything. I don't think anybody is going to stand up and defend those that just said, to heck with it, we ain't going to do nothing, because that puts us all in jeopardy. So to me, that's a clear place to start. And I would hope that the minds at the Sewerage and Water Board would do it that way. Now, we've had public and private conversations with them. And young man, you're precisely correct. We all got to have water to live. So at the end of the day, we can't have the system shut down, but I think that there is some sensibility that we can impart in this process.
Thank you, gentlemen, for answering those questions that we distributed to you for you. We're now going to move to questions from the audience. We have about approximately 20 questions in our possession that we need to get through by 6:30. And so we're going to ask you these questions. Both moderator Trevor Bryan and moderator Sylvia McKenzie will ask those questions. We ask that you try to keep your comments as brief as possible so we get through all 20 questions. Also, too, we do collect donations for the food that you received tonight. If you would be so kind to contribute to that so that we can continue to have chicken and red beans and rice. Hopefully that made it, I don't know, and salad and tomatoes. We try to offer a nutritious meal. So your contribution is very, very, very much appreciated. Thank you. First question.
How do you think all the revenue was spent in the last 5, 10, or 13 years?
You know what? I wish I could tell you that, but I don't think that it has been spent the way that it likely should have been. Now, there is obviously issues with the management, and we don't know. Now, I cannot sit here and tell you that anybody stole anything and did anything wrong. What I got to tell you is that we don't know. Now, my cynical mind says that obviously something went left, but I can't quantify that. So until we actually get in there and actually find out what's there, I cannot tell you what happened. I just, as a citizen, don't feel like it has all been right. I think that removing public accountability made me feel more uncomfortable that it's all right. At least if there was somebody who I could have called to ask a question to, I might have a higher comfort level. But being as such that the board went from being something accountable to the public to being something that was totally closed doors, I got questions. But I don't want to infer that something is left because I don't know that for sure.
Thank you. Why is there a ready-to-serve charge on the water bills?
Ready-to-serve charge?
Yep. $25.
We're both looking at each other. We're not sure about that one.
First thing at the top of your bill.
The $25 before we even pay a water bill.
Oh, I think I might know the answer to that one. So I think if this is the right answer, depending on your meter size, Sewerage and Water Board automatically charges you a certain amount of money. So if you have a meter that is 3/8, you get charged a certain amount. If you have something that's 5/8, you get charged even more. If you have 1 inch, it's even more. And then you get a certain sanitation fee as well. So if you again are not home for 1 day a month, and the charges are $25 and sanitation, I think is usually $24, you're getting the bill for $49 no matter what. That's just how it's set up and how the system works.
Thank you. If it was up, this is for Councilman Giarrusso. If it was up to you to solve this problem, what would you do first?
The first thing I would do is stop the shutoffs. That would be the first thing I would do. And what I worry about is twofold. Number one is Sewerage and Water Board has a pricing plan where they say you can come in and either pay 25% of your bill right now and then get on a payment plan for a certain period of time. Well, if you don't have a lot of money and your bill is $400, that means you got to come up with $100 that day. That's a lot of money for them. And we gotta make sure that we're getting that right. Number two is, I frankly think they sort of engage in a scare tactic, because they tell you, that's fine, don't pay. But if you go through the administrative hearing and you lose, you're gonna owe us all the late fees that you owe. So maybe you wanna pay right now. I don't think that's right either. So I think the answer is, you gotta make sure the billing is 100% ironed out before you think about asking anybody for a penny.
Thank you. Did we have these problems prior to privatization to this magnitude?
Well, the board isn't privatized, but there were issues at Sewage and Water Board. But I keep going back to the fact that you had accountability and that you had public entities that you could call to deal with some of the situations. Now, I really think that over the last few years, it spiraled way past what it had been. But the Sewage and Water Board has always had some issues. I just think it's gotten progressively worse over the last few years.
Thank you. When will Sewage and Water Board NOLA hire competent customer service personnel who are courteous and well-informed?
Well, that's
That
a
person
good.
also wants you to know that they are available.
So, part of the problem is, honestly, right now you have at least 17,000 people calling in, and you have, 38 people who can respond to them? You don't have enough people, is one of the biggest problems. And so you have some really good people who are working there. I went and I watched, and there's people who know the systems and can work things. And there's some people who are new and frankly overwhelmed by what's going on. But the big part of the problem is they don't have enough people. And they have people who aren't doing a good enough job on top of that. And you got to make sure we're weeding out the folks who can't help you, who can't get you to go where they need to be, and make sure you got enough folks who can make sure that your bill's being handled in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Former Councilman Thomas stated earlier that a possible solution was to start with amnesty. How can we work toward that goal, and how long can it possibly take? Because they're talking about shutting off water now.
Well, again, it's kind of going to go along the same track that I've been talking about. Amnesty is fine, but you've also got to have some process in place to get people to pay. Keep in mind, folks, as distasteful as paying it is, if you don't pay it, the whole system's going to shut down. I mean, let's just be real. So I don't have a problem with trying to give people help. I support that vehemently. I don't think that we ought to be cutting off people that really don't have the resources to pay. However, you've got to look at amnesty for those, but then look at those people who have just said, I ain't paying it, and deal with them. I mean, this is not a hard draw for me. I think you got people that genuinely need help. They ain't hard to identify. And you got people that have said, I'm going to beat the system. That's what we need to be dealing with.
Okay. I have a question. It says, what about the elderly person or citizens who are taking
Loans out
loans
to pay the bill.
for hiring a plumber?
But behind plumbers and some
And
of
say
them
if
taking loans out to pay the bill.
Okay, if they can't pay the bill, they're taking loans out.
I mean, I talked to Pastor Watson about this because I've heard that story before, and I called him last week to see if that's true. He said, I have people in my congregation who are either taking out loans or going to payday and trying to get paid in advance, and it isn't right. And I think Councilmember Banks is 100% right. If you have people who are gaming the system, they're skirting it, they're just not paying, period, we need to go after those people and make sure you're paying. But when you have somebody, and I see somebody sitting in the back of the room who I know who you aren't getting a bill and you're trying to pay it, and Sewage and Water Board won't take your money, that's a problem. Right? When you have people who Sewage and Water Board will say to you, you go to the administrative hearing, the only thing they had on there initially was, you need a plumber's report. Well, that's not the only piece of evidence you can bring with you. You can bring a picture of your meter. You can show the meter. You can do a lot of different things. But to answer your question, I really think the answer is they need to get the billing system ironed out, and they need to put people into different buckets and groups and say, here's the bucket of people who haven't paid for 3 months and beyond, right, or a year. We're going to go after all those people first. And once we've nailed down all those people, then we're going to work our way down the list of people who fall in the middle, and people who are clearly 100% wrong, so people aren't taking out loans or having to do funky things just to pay their water bill.
When you say funky things, what is funky
Well,
things?
I mean, what I hope it is, you know, you're not being able to not pay your food bill, that you're not being able to pay your energy, that you're shorting some other bill because you're making a decision, I gotta pay Susan Water Board and not my other bills. That's not right.
that's right.
Thank you. And this one is 3 calls. It says Surgeon Water Board billing issues. The problem needs to be addressed. It's not happening to everyone. That is why some are saying they just don't want to pay. This is not the truth. It is happening. And it began in November through January billing cycles. The mayor needs to address this serious problem before making us pay for recycled water. You can't get any answers from Surgeon Water Board at all, not in person, phone, or email. 3rd call, last. Nothing is being in place to rectify this serious problem. When and how is my question. Will this problem be resolved? That's their question.
The fact is, we were asking questions too that we haven't gotten answers to. So I don't have an answer as to how to get them because we're working on that ourselves. It is clear that there is a billing issue. Now, we've gotten to a partial rationalization behind what that is. There was a system that was put in place that by all accounts is a legitimate ballot system. The disconnect is that there were people there that weren't trained on how to use it. And that's where the wheels came on. So you got a system in place that people didn't know how to work. That's how it came apart. So we understand where it got disconnected, and we're working to try to get it reconnected. But keep in mind that where we sit, some of those same questions y'all asking, we asking too. We are not the Sewage and Water Board, but we are trying to get to the bottom of this because all of us live here. And this problem ain't just frustrating for you all, it is very frustrating for us too. And it is very difficult to deal with this elephant that we are not going to eat all at once. We're going to eat this elephant one bite at a time. And this is going to take a minute because it didn't just get messed up overnight. It's been messed up for a minute, but please know that I can guarantee that the two of us are diligently working, and I can also speak on behalf of other colleagues. We want to get this fixed. And we're working to get that, but I wish I could snap my fingers and make it happen right now. And as good as I am, I ain't that good. So we're getting there, but, and I'm going to ask you all again, just understand, this is not going to happen overnight, but we're working towards it.
Okay, some of these questions that are left are basically answered right now by you all, but at the same time, we as citizens, all of us as citizens of New Orleans, understand that yes, it is our problem. But it seems like the frustration comes when we see leakage everywhere, and it's been there for years. We are now paying for those faulty infrastructures that were never dealt with after Katrina. For instance, there's a reserve fund that Surgeon Water Board is supposed to have. Y'all may not work for Surgeon Water Board, but y'all do have more intact, interference with them than we do. So we do expect some answers from City Council, because I know y'all familiar with my face and some other faces in the audience that comes to City Hall. And all we saying as frustrated citizens, we're tired. And I feel what these people are saying because my mom had the same problem. But thank God for me living with her, I was able to help keep paying $100 each month to keep it from going up. So that's the question that, we really asking, when will it stop? And when would the money that the government, FEMA, had given finally be used for the citizens?
Well, let me address the frustration point first. We understand everybody's frustrated, right? I mean, I see it from my friends, I see it from my constituents, I see it from the phone calls that we get, and I'll divide it into two different groups. Number one is, ma'am, I know you asked me about your bill over there. I've had no success in getting Sewage and Water Board fixed bills, none, in 3 months I've been in office. They just have not had effort to do it. Now, we've had better success in getting some infrastructure things taken care of. Let me tell you one of the major problems right now with the infrastructure issue. Sewage and Water Board has not completed its financial audit. It is the first governmental agency since Hurricane Katrina to not have its audit submitted to the state. So what does that mean to each of you? It means that it can't get bonded to do work that needs to get done. What does it mean when you can't get bonded? It means you can't do the capital projects that need to get done to fix your streets, to fix the sewers, to fix the drainage pipes that Councilmember Thomas was talking about. So we need to make sure two things. Number one, that their financial house is in order. Maybe three things. Number one, their financial house is in order. Number two, we need to make sure that those departments are talking to each other the way that we say that they need to. And then number three, we really need input from the community to tell us where there are problems that exist. Every time we get something in my office, and I know Councilmember Banks' office and staff is back there, we email them right away and say, there's an issue with this intersection. There's an issue here in the middle of the street. Now, I will tell you a little secret. If it is a sewer issue, or it's a hydrant that's draining, Sewage and Water Board will come address that very quickly. They're supposed to come address that because that is emergency work that needs to get done in short order. But if it's sort of run-of-the-mill stuff, it gets in line until the FEMA money can be spent.
The other question, when are they going to hire more people? Some people want jobs and need jobs.
They are under the process, what I understand, of trying to fill vacant positions. There was a job fair that was held 2 weeks ago, where they did fill positions. I know that is actively underway. I do not know, sitting here today, exactly how many more vacant positions there are.
450.
But I don't know if that's the thing. I know that they filled positions.
50, they only hired about 50 people.
Okay. So we do know that they have made some efforts to hire people, and that is ongoing. Now, there's another, and let me tell you about this elephant. Part of the issue with the elephant is not just Sewage and Water Board, it's also Civil Service, that those two entities, and it's not just communication with DPW as relates to infrastructure, it's also communication with Civil Service, that some of these job classifications and requirements have to be untangled. Some of that stuff just doesn't fit the real work. And we have been working with them. Matter of fact, I convened a meeting between Sewage and Water Board and Civil Service to start to try to untangle some of that stuff to make it easier to start filling positions. And and I know it's frustrating to you all, it's frustrating to me. You drive down the street and you see a Sewage and Water Board truck and they got 7 dudes there and only 1 digging. Right? Well, that's a problem. And it's a problem, and it's a part of it is because of the job classifications that only the ditch digger can touch the shovel. Well, the wheelbarrow guy, he can't touch the shovel. And the porter rock in the wheelbarrow dude, he can't touch the wheelbarrow. And then the truck driver, he don't touch the shovel or the wheelbarrow. Those kinds of things are currently in place. And I'm not trying to be funny about it, but that is the reality. And the job classifications are just so archaic that it limits functionality. And that's something that we're trying to work through. So I know that part is being worked on.
This is the other question. Have the employees of the Sewage and Water Board learned to park correctly without using fake handicap tag cards? We need to allow adequate parking.
Look, I agree that you need to have adequate parking, number one, and then number two, they don't pay a lot of people who work there very much money. So to pay $175 a month just to be able to park near that place is a real problem. But when we asked about the handicap parking, they told us, well, we don't have an ability to do anything about it. And I said, guys, you have the ability to reprimand people and tell them when you've done something wrong, and you can do that. Now, to Councilmember Banks' point, I want to use a real life example. Remember I was talking about the transfers for the 9,000 houses? So they have meter reader 1, meter reader 2, and meter reader 3. Meter reader 1 is generally who comes to your house and reads the meter allegedly every single month. They're the people who are supposed to come to your house every month. I see a lot of shaking heads. No, I know it doesn't happen. But when you transfer to another house, you're supposed to have meter reader 2 come to your house to close it out. So if meter reader 2 doesn't come, then the transfer never happens. And I said, well, guys, why don't you just let meter reader 1 do that? And they looked at me and they said, well, we should look into that. and I hear the laughter, and I said, yeah, I think maybe you should. And if the equipment is different than meter reader 2 has, they ought to have the same thing that meter reader 1 has. It's stuff like that that drives all of us crazy, and it makes this a lot harder than it needs to be.
The last question is, if a private contractor managed to bill 10 times the original contract, but was not able to train their employees to work the billing system correctly, why should we even think about privatizing Sewage and Water Board?
Let me be very clear that I'm not sold on privatization. And I would hope that the people in this room and the rest of the citizens would also keep very open minds before we start talking about privatization. Now, the government may not be perfect, but it ain't all bad. And I assure you that privatization ain't all good. So before we make that determination, I would ask everybody to let us delve into this way deeper than where we are to try to figure out which is the better way to go with that.
Thank you, Councilman Banks, and thank you, Councilman Caruso, please. Very much appreciate your time with us. Now is the time in our forum that we move to action. We understand and know that as a people, we need to take action together, sometimes in order to move what's happening in our government forward. So we want to first direct this to you. What do you think the action that we all can do as a whole in order to get resolution on this issue? One thing that I know that we're doing is pastors and concerned citizens are joining together in front of Sewage and Water Board and praying together on Wednesdays at noon. We believe that prayer works. Amen? Amen. We believe that prayer works. Amen? Amen. And so that's one thing that we're doing. What else do you think that we can do as a whole to get beyond this issue?
Well, let me echo, Rev. I know that prayer works. I would not be sitting as a councilman if it didn't.
Amen.
But there is something that you can do.
Order, please. Order. Remember the